My name is Prince Malik al-Samari. I am 34 years old, and on October 20th, 2021, the world expected me to assume the throne of one of the most powerful and secretive kingdoms in the Middle East. Instead, that day was scheduled to be my last upon the face of the earth. I was sentenced to be publicly executed, not for a crime of state, not for political treason, but for attempting to destroy the book that ended up saving my soul, the Holy Bible. I was born in 1989 as the undisputed heir to the Kingdom of Samaar, a dynasty forged in the desert, floating on oceans of oil, and ruled by an interpretation of the law so strict it made neighboring nations tremble. From my first cry, I was molded to be a king. Not just any king, but the sword of Islam, the defender of the faith. My life was not a normal life. It was a sequence of unimaginable excess and fierce indoctrination. Our main palace, the Qasr al-Dahab, sprawled over an area that dwarfed entire cities. My private quarters were larger than luxury hotels in Europe, with floors of lapis lazuli imported from Afghanistan and faucets from which flowed purified water, and on special occasions, oud perfumes costing thousands of dollars an ounce. I had a fleet of 40 high-end vehicles, from armored Rolls-Royces to custom Italian supercars that had never touched public asphalt. Trained falcons, pet lions, and an army of servants who were not permitted to look me in the eye were part of my daily routine. But, like the princess you may have heard of, I must tell you the truth about absolute power. It is the loneliest drug in existence. Unlike others who sought love, I sought dominion. I was taught that compassion was a weakness and that mercy was a character flaw. My education was designed to eliminate any trace of doubt. By age 15, I commanded my own unit of the Royal Guard. By 20, I sat on war councils. My father, King Rashid, looked at me with pride whenever I demonstrated cruelty toward those we considered infidels. The heart of a king must be made of stone, he would tell me as we watched military exercises from the palace balcony. Only stone can build walls that protect the truth. And I believed him. I believed our truth was the only one, and that any other belief was a poison that had to be eradicated. My hatred for Christianity was not passive, it was an active obsession. I saw Christians as agents of the West, infiltrators coming to corrupt our cultural and religious purity with their books and their false prophet. In the summer of 2020, my intelligence network intercepted a massive shipment on the northern border. It was the largest seizure of religious contraband in our kingdom's history. 50,000 Bibles translated into Arabic, camouflaged inside boxes of medical supplies. When the general in charge informed me, I felt a wave of righteous fury, but also triumph. I ordered that they not be destroyed immediately at the border. I wanted to make an example. I wanted those Bibles brought to the central courtyard of the capital citadel to be burned in a ceremony broadcast to the entire kingdom, with me, the crown prince, lighting the pyre. It would be my final declaration before my father abdicated in my favor. The kingdom of Samaar would never tolerate the cross. The boxes arrived at the palace and were stored in a high-security vault beneath my quarters. That night, a dark and arrogant curiosity took hold of me. I went down to the vault, surrounded by my elite guards, and ordered one of the boxes opened. I picked up one of the books. It was heavy, bound in black synthetic leather with gold edges. Holy Bible, it said, in perfect Arabic calligraphy. I scoffed aloud, making my guards laugh. I told them I would take one to my room to study the enemy's lies, so I could better mock them in my burning speech. I went up to my suite, locked the double mahogany doors, and sat at my ebony desk under the light of a bohemian crystal lamp. My intention was clear: to find contradictions, to look for errors, to arm myself with arguments to humiliate the Christian faith. I opened the book with disdain. My fingers turned the pages looking for something I could ridicule. I landed on the Gospel of Matthew. I began to read with a cynical smile, expecting to find weakness. I read, "You have heard that it was said, 'An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.' But I tell you not to resist an evil person. But whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also." I stopped. The smile vanished from my face. This went against everything I had been taught. In my world, if someone hit you, you cut off their hand. If someone insulted you, you silenced their family. What kind of leader, what kind of God would say, "Love your enemies"? It seemed absurd to me, repulsive even. But I couldn't stop reading. I turned the pages, looking for more mistakes, but every sentence seemed to hit me with an authority that did not come from the sword, but from something higher. I read about the adulterous woman. In my kingdom, we would have stoned her without hesitation. It would have been a spectacle of justice. But this man, Jesus, said, "He who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first." I felt a cold knot in my stomach. I thought of my own sins, the lives I had ordered taken, the cruelty I had dispensed, the dark secrets I kept behind palace doors. Who was I to cast the stone? The question assaulted me and offended me at the same time. I slammed the book shut. "Rubbish," I muttered. But that night I couldn't sleep. The words of that book spun in my head like an incessant echo. The next day I read again, and the next. For 3 weeks, while the grand burning ceremony was being prepared, I lived a double life. By day, I was Prince Malik, the terror of infidels, overseeing the construction of the giant pyre in the square. By night, I devoured the Bible like a thirsty man in the desert. I reached the book of Acts, the letters of Paul. I saw Saul of Tarsus, a man who, like me, persecuted Christians believing he was serving God, and how he was transformed. Is this possible? I asked myself. Can the persecutor become a brother? The internal struggle was violent. My logical mind, trained in radical Islam, fought against a heart that for the first time felt beats of real life. The moment of truth came 2 days before the ceremony. I was reading the Gospel of John, chapter 14. "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." It didn't say he was a way. It didn't say he was a truth. He claimed it all. In that instant, in the solitude of my armored room, I fell to my knees. It wasn't a rational decision. It was a spiritual surrender. "Jesus," I whispered, feeling the word burn my lips. "If you are real, if you are who you say you are, and not the minor prophet I was taught, show yourself. Because I am about to burn your words, and if you don't do something, I will know you are a lie." There was no thunder. There were no lights. Only a profound silence and a peace that flooded the room. A peace I had never felt in my 34 years of life amidst luxury and violence. I knew in that silence that he was real. But then came the conflict. Ask yourself this question. What would you do if the truth you just discovered cost you not only your job or your friends, but your kingdom, your inheritance, and your head? The day of the ceremony arrived, September 15th, 2021. The main square of the capital was packed. Thousands of people chanted my name and religious slogans. Television cameras from all over the Arab world were broadcasting live. In the center, a mountain of 50,000 Bibles rose like a monument to hate. I wore my white and gold ceremonial robe with my grandfather's sword at my belt. My father, the king, was in the royal box watching. They handed me a lit torch. The heat of the fire hit my face, but it was nothing compared to the fire I felt in my chest. I climbed the steps toward the pyre. Silence fell over the crowd. I was supposed to give a speech condemning the infidels and then throw the torch. I approached the microphone. I looked at the crowd, then I looked at the Bibles. I saw one that had slid near my feet. I could read the gold spine. My heart beat so hard I thought it would be heard over the loudspeakers. "People of Samar," I began, my voice booming across the square. "Today we are here to destroy these books. We have been told they are poison. We have been told they are lies." I paused. Protocol demanded I shout curses now, but I couldn't. My hand holding the torch began to tremble. "But," I continued, and a murmur of confusion rippled through the square. "But truth does not fear fire. If this book is a lie, the fire will consume it. But if there is truth in it—" I stopped. I looked toward the royal box. My father had stood up, his face a mask of confusion and rising anger. The chief of the religious police beside me whispered, "Highness, what are you doing? Burn them." In that moment I remembered the words, "Whoever confesses me before men, him the Son of Man also will confess before the angels of God." I dropped the torch, not onto the Bibles, but onto the ground, onto the concrete. The flame went out with a pathetic hiss. "I cannot burn this book," I declared, my voice now firm and clear. because in it I have found the living God. Jesus is not just a prophet, he is the King of Kings. The chaos that followed is difficult to describe. It was as if a bomb had detonated in the square. The shock of silence lasted a second, followed by a roar of fury. "Apostasy!" someone screamed. "Traitor!" shouted others. The guards, my own guards, hesitated for a moment, but my father's orders were immediate. "Seize him!" I saw the king, my father, making a gesture of cutting the head with his hand. In seconds, I was tackled. The crowd tried to lynch me, but the military surrounded me, not to protect me, but to secure me as a prisoner. I was beaten with rifle butts, spat upon, and dragged out of the square while the cameras were hurriedly turned off. If this story is impacting you, if you feel that there is something more to this world than what your eyes see, I invite you to subscribe to the channel right now. Stories like mine need to be told, and your support helps us bring this light to more people. Subscribe and hit the bell, because what comes next defies all human logic. They took me to Al-Hajar prison, a fortress in the middle of the desert used for the worst enemies of the state. They didn't put me in a VIP cell. They threw me into the pit, an underground cell with no light, no windows, where the temperature dropped to freezing at night and was suffocatingly hot during the day. They stripped me of my royal robes and left me in my underwear, chained to the wall. For 3 weeks I was interrogated. They didn't want information. They wanted me to recant. The imams came every day. "Are you crazy, Malik?" they would say. "You have the world at your feet. Just say you were sick, that it was heat stroke. Your father will forgive you if you humble yourself publicly." But something had changed in my spiritual DNA. Every time they beat me, every time they denied me water, I felt a closeness to Jesus that was more real than the physical pain. I remembered how he was beaten, how he was humiliated. "I cannot deny what I have seen," I answered them with broken lips. "The truth has set me free, even if I am in chains." The final sentence came on October 18th. I would be beheaded in 2 days, at dawn, in the very place where I refused to burn the Bibles. My father did not come to see me. He sent an official document declaring me not a son and erasing my name from the royal family tree. The night before the execution, October 19th, I was lying on the filthy floor of my cell. My body was broken. I had broken ribs and could barely open one eye due to the swelling. Despair tried to take hold of me. "Lord," I prayed in the absolute darkness, "is this the end? Did you save me only for me to die like a criminal? If it is your will, I accept it, but I am afraid." I cried. I won't lie to you, acting the stoic hero. I cried like a child. The fear of the sword is real. The fear of death is human. It was then, around 3 a.m., that the impossible happened. I hadn't slept. I was staring up at where I assumed the ceiling was. Suddenly, a small light appeared in the corner of the cell. At first, I thought it was a hallucination from dehydration, but the light grew. It wasn't light from a bulb or a fire. It was a liquid light. It moved and breathed. The cell, which smelled of urine and blood, suddenly filled with the scent of fresh flowers, of rain in the desert. The temperature stabilized, and in the midst of that light I saw a figure. I didn't see a face with photographic detail because the radiance was too intense, but I saw the silhouette of a man, and I knew who it was. He needed no introduction. The presence emanated an authority and a love so dense it was almost hard to breathe. "Malik," said a voice. I didn't hear it with my ears, but it resonated inside my chest, vibrating in my bones. "Do not fear. Your mission does not end here." I tried to speak, but I couldn't. "You have been willing to lose an earthly kingdom for me," the voice continued. "Now you will see how I move the kingdoms of the earth for you. Arise." I looked at my chains. They were reinforced steel shackles anchored to the stone wall. The moment he said, "Arise," the shackles didn't break. They simply opened. Click, click. They fell to the floor with a metallic clang that should have alerted the entire prison block. I stood up, trembling. The pain in my ribs was gone. The swelling in my eye had vanished. I felt strong, stronger than when I trained with the Royal Guard. "Walk," said the figure, and the light slowly faded, leaving a residual glow in my eyes. The door to my cell, a slab of solid steel controlled electronically, was ajar. I pushed. It opened without a creak. I stepped out into the corridor. I expected to see guards armed with assault rifles, dogs, alarms. What I saw froze me. The 2 guards assigned to my door were standing, but motionless. Their eyes were open, but they didn't blink. They were frozen in time, not asleep, but suspended. I passed my hand in front of one of their faces. Nothing, not a reaction. I walked down the main corridor. The security cameras were working, the red lights blinking, but I knew with a supernatural certainty that no one was seeing me on the monitors. It was as if I were invisible. I reached the prison yard. There were watchtowers with snipers. I walked through the center of the yard, under the glare of the floodlights. No one shot, no one shouted. I reached the outer wall, 5 meters high. Lord, how do I pass this? I thought. And then I saw the service gate, the one garbage trucks use, slowly opening by itself. There was no wind. There was no motor. It simply opened enough for me to pass. I stepped out into the desert. The cool night air hit my face. I was free. But I was in the middle of nowhere, miles from civilization, dressed in rags. It was then that I saw the headlights. An old Land Rover approached over the dune. I tensed, thinking it was a patrol. The vehicle stopped beside me. A man stepped out, a Bedouin with his face covered. "Are you Malik?" he asked. "Who are you?" I replied defensively. "It doesn't matter who I am. A dream woke me 2 hours ago. A voice told me to drive to this exact spot and wait for a man named Malik. Get in, I have water and clothes." I got into the vehicle. The man was not a Christian. He was a devout Muslim of the desert, but he had obeyed the dream with reverent fear. He drove me for 6 hours through routes that did not appear on maps, dodging military checkpoints which, according to the car radio, were already on high alert for the inexplicable disappearance of the prisoner. He took me to the border with a neighboring, more tolerant country. He gave me his own clothes and some money. "May your God accompany you," he told me as we parted, because clearly he is powerful. I crossed the border on foot, blending in with a group of refugees. It was an arduous journey. I went from sleeping in silk sheets to sleeping on the ground of refugee camps, eating stale bread. But never, not for a second, did I miss my previous life. Every night, I looked at the stars and thanked Jesus for being alive, and more importantly, for being known by him. I managed to reach Europe months later, thanks to a network of missionaries who, upon hearing my story, took me in with caution at first, and then with brotherly love. The day of my baptism was the happiest day of my life. There were no cameras, no crowds, no gold, just a small church on the outskirts of Berlin, a tub full of water, and a group of brothers and sisters praying for me. When I came out of the water, Prince Malik died definitively. A new man was born, a servant of Christ. Today, my life is very different. I live under a protected identity, as the death sentence in my home country is still in effect and there are million-dollar bounties on my head. But I do not live in fear. I travel with caution, sharing my testimony, helping translate the Bible into Arabic dialects that do not yet have access to the Word, and working with underground leaders in the Middle East. I have lost a temporal kingdom, yes. I have lost the chance to sit on a golden throne and be called Your Majesty. But I have gained an incorruptible crown. I have gained a family that spans the globe. And I have gained the peace that surpasses all understanding. Sometimes I think of my father. I pray for him every day. I pray that the same light that illuminated my dark cell might illuminate his golden palace, which is actually a much darker prison than he realizes. I pray for my former subjects, that they may discover that the true king does not need swords to rule, but rules with a love that sacrificed itself. Many people ask me if it was worth it. They ask me if I miss the power, the cars, the instant respect. And I tell them, imagine you are in a desert dying of thirst and you have a bag full of diamonds. What good are they to you? Jesus is the living water. I traded a bag of shiny stones for the water that saved my life. It was the best deal in history. Now I want to speak to you on the other side of the screen. Maybe you are not an Arab prince. Maybe you don't have an army at your command or a death sentence on your head. But perhaps you have your own kingdom that you fear losing. Maybe it is your reputation. Maybe it is a relationship you know does not please God. Maybe it is your comfort or your money. Jesus is calling you today. He doesn't promise it will be easy. Look at my story. It wasn't easy. There was pain, there was loss, there was loneliness. But he promises you that he will be with you. He promises you that when the fire is ready to consume you, he will be in the midst of the fire with you. He promises you that when the chains seem unbreakable, He holds the key. He promises you that when the world turns its back on you, He will open His arms. Are you willing to try to destroy your own prejudices, as I tried to destroy that Bible, and dare to open it with a sincere heart? I challenge you to do so. Read the Gospel of John. Ask God to reveal Himself to you. You don't need to be in a prison cell to see His light. You can see it right now, in your room, in your office, wherever you are. The God who paralyzed the guards, the God who opened the steel doors, the God who guided a Bedouin in the middle of the night to rescue me, is the same God who is listening to you now. There is nothing impossible for Him. There is no sin too great, no past too dark, no chains too strong. If you believe that God exists and that He continues to perform miracles today, subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who needs hope. You never know if your share might be the vehicle God uses, like that Land Rover in the desert, to save someone who is lost. Thank you for listening to my story. Do not worship me nor admire my courage, because I was just a man full of hate. Admire the one who can transform hate into love. Admire Jesus, the true King. May God bless you greatly.